In my first life, I was Dr. Sarah Chen, a brilliant neuroscientist who revolutionized brain-computer interfaces at age 42, only to watch my adoptive sister Maya steal my research, seduce my husband, and systematically destroy my reputation through fabricated ethics violations. Maya, the golden child my parents always favored, had harbored a twisted jealousy since childhood. She couldn't bear that the charity case they took in outshone her in every academic pursuit. I died at 53 in what appeared to be a lab accident, but I knew the truth. Maya had sabotaged my equipment after I discovered she'd been selling my preliminary research to foreign competitors. Now I'm 18 again, sitting in the auditorium of Lincoln High School, my cap balanced on trembling knees as Principal Morrison drones about our valedictorian's bright future at MIT. The familiar weight of the medal around my neck feels like a chain. I remember this moment perfectly, the day that set everything in motion. In my original timeline, I gave a speech about gratitude and family that moved my parents to tears. They bragged about their two brilliant daughters to everyone who'd listen, comparing Maya and me until she cracked under the pressure and chose her path of sabotage. But something's wrong. My parents' seats are empty. That's when I see her, Maya, 17 and beautiful as ever, sitting 3 rows back with that knowing smirk I remember from my deathbed. Our eyes meet, and the recognition is instant and mutual. She mouths silently, "I remember everything." My blood turns to ice. This isn't just my second chance, it's hers too. After the ceremony, as classmates swarm around us in the parking lot, Maya corners me by the trophy case. Her voice is silk wrapped around steel. "So we're both back, aren't we, sister?" She examines her perfect manicure with theatrical casualness. I have to admit, I'm impressed. Somehow you managed to keep mom and dad away from your little moment of glory. Very calculated of you. I force my expression to remain neutral, but inside I'm screaming. She continues, "In our first life, I made the mistake of competing with you on your terms. Academic achievement, scientific breakthrough, playing the good daughter game. But you know what I learned from watching you die?" She steps closer, her whisper barely audible. "Power isn't about being the smartest person in the room. It's about controlling the people who think they are." The crowd around us fades to white noise. "This time," Maya says, her smile sharp enough to cut glass, "I'm not going to wait decades to destroy you. I'm going to make sure you never get the chance to shine at all. Every opportunity, every breakthrough, every relationship. I'll be there first. And the beautiful part? Everyone will think it's natural. After all, I'm the real daughter here. You're just the stray they took pity on." She turns to leave, then pauses. "Oh, and Sarah, this time when you die, it won't look like an accident." Maya's threat hangs in the air like poison, but instead of fear, I feel something I haven't experienced in either lifetime: clarity. In my first life, I played defense for 35 years, always reacting to her manipulations, always trying to prove I belonged in our family. Not this time. I pull out my phone and dial MIT's admissions office. When they answer, I speak with the confident authority of someone who's already lived through this conversation once. "This is Sarah Chen, your incoming freshman. I need to defer my enrollment for 1 year to pursue an independent research opportunity." The admissions counselor starts to protest, but I cut them off. "I'll be presenting my findings at the International Neuroscience Symposium next spring. I believe MIT would benefit from having a student with that level of experience." It's a calculated gamble. In my original timeline, I didn't attend that symposium until my junior year, and my paper on neural plasticity became the foundation of my career. But now I have something Maya doesn't expect: the willingness to abandon the safe path entirely. Next, I text my parents a carefully crafted message. "Sorry I missed you at graduation. Something incredible has come up. I've been offered a chance to work with Dr. Elizabeth Hawthorne at her private lab." This is partially true. Dr. Hawthorne had extended the invitation in my first life, but I'd been too focused on following the traditional academic route to accept. Maya's plan depended on us both going to college, where she could use her natural charisma and family connections to overshadow my academic achievements. By stepping off that chessboard entirely, I've forced her to play a game she hasn't prepared for. The real masterstroke comes when I intercept Maya's college acceptance letter. In my first life, she attended the same private university where our father served on the board of trustees. a detail that allowed her to network with influential families and eventually position herself in my professional circle. But this time, I know exactly when the letter arrives. I'm waiting by the mailbox when the postman delivers it. Maya's acceptance to Pemberton University. Full scholarship, pre-med track, everything she needs to eventually infiltrate my world. I steam open the envelope with surgical precision, scan the contents, then replace them with a rejection letter I've meticulously forged. The original acceptance goes into my bag, along with detailed information about orientation and course requirements. That evening, I watch Maya's face crumple as she reads the fake rejection. Our parents try to comfort her, suggesting community college or taking a gap year, but I can see the rage building behind her tears. This is the first time in either of our lives that Maya has been denied something she wanted. But my counter move goes deeper than sabotage. While she spirals, I'm already 3 steps ahead. I've used her real acceptance letter to access Pemberton's student portal, where I submit a formal complaint about irregularities in the admissions process and concerns about nepotism affecting scholarship decisions. The complaint is anonymous but detailed enough to trigger an internal investigation that will keep Maya tied up in appeals and bureaucracy for months. Meanwhile, I accept Dr. Hawthorne's offer to join her cutting-edge research into memory consolidation, the same research that will eventually lead to my breakthrough discoveries. But now, I'll have a decade head start. 3 weeks later, I'm setting up my workstation in Hawthorne's lab when my phone buzzes with a news alert that makes my blood run cold. Local teen dies in car accident during late-night drive. Below the headline is a photo I recognize. Marcus Webb, the boy who asked Maya to prom in our first life. The boy who, in the original timeline, became her first serious boyfriend and eventually her devoted accomplice in academic espionage. He wasn't supposed to die. He was supposed to be alive, dating Maya, helping her build a social network she'd use against me. My small intervention has already created a butterfly effect I never saw coming, and I realize with growing dread that I might have just eliminated one of Maya's key allies, or created a much more dangerous enemy by taking away someone she cared about. 6 months into my work with Dr. Hawthorne, I achieve what took me 4 years of graduate study in my first life, a breakthrough in memory enhancement therapy that could revolutionize treatment for Alzheimer's patients. The research paper I co-author with Hawthorne catches the attention of the entire neuroscience community, but more importantly, it attracts the notice of someone I never expected, Dr. Vincent Morrison, the pharmaceutical magnate whose company dominates the memory care market. Morrison requests a private meeting, arriving at the lab in a car worth more than most people's houses. He's older than I remember from my first life. We'd only met briefly at conferences, but his eyes hold the same calculating intelligence that made him billions. "Miss Chen," he says, settling into Hawthorne's cramped office like he owns it, "your research presents some interesting possibilities and some concerning implications for existing market structures." The threat is subtle but unmistakable. In my original timeline, Morrison's company had spent decades developing less effective treatments that kept patients dependent on expensive medications. My breakthrough threatens to make those treatments obsolete, potentially costing him hundreds of millions in lost revenue. "I have a proposition," Morrison continues, sliding a contract across the desk. "My company would be happy to fund your research, generously. All we ask is that you allow us to guide the development timeline and clinical trial process." His smile doesn't reach his eyes. After all, rushing breakthrough treatments to market without proper consideration can have unpredictable consequences. I recognize the offer for what it is, a golden cage. Accept his funding and my research becomes his property, buried in regulatory delays and modified to suit his profit margins. Refuse, and I make an enemy with the resources to destroy my career before it begins. But there's another problem lurking in Morrison's shadow. As he leaves the lab, I spot Maya in the parking lot, no longer the devastated teenager from 6 months ago. She's transformed herself. Designer clothes, perfect makeup, the kind of polished confidence that comes from newfound purpose. And she's talking animatedly to Morrison's assistant, a conversation that ends with an exchange of business cards. That night, Hawthorne pulls me aside with news that confirms my worst fears. Sarah, I've been contacted by the University Ethics Board. Apparently, there are questions about your age, your qualifications, and whether I followed proper protocols in bringing you onto the research team. Her face is grave. The complaint came through official channels, but the level of detail suggests someone with inside knowledge of our work. Maya has found her new angle of attack. If she can't outshine me academically, she'll destroy my credibility instead. And somehow, she's connected with Morrison, the one person with both the motive and resources to bury my research permanently. The next morning brings another shock. Hawthorne's lab has been flagged for a routine safety inspection by the FDA. The timing isn't coincidental. I recognize the signature bureaucratic warfare that Morrison's company uses to harass competitors. My research is about to be tied up in red tape for months, possibly years, but the final blow comes in a phone call from my parents. Sarah, my mother's voice is strained. Maya has been accepted to a special accelerated program at Johns Hopkins. She'll be able to complete her pre-med requirements in 2 years instead of 4. There's a pause. The program was personally recommended by Dr. Vincent Morrison. Isn't it wonderful that she's found such a powerful mentor? I hang up the phone, pieces clicking into place. Maya hasn't just found a new path. She's found the perfect patron. Morrison gets a brilliant young protege he can mold to his purposes, and Maya gets access to resources and connections that will let her strike at me from directions I never anticipated. As I sit in the lab that might soon be shut down, watching my breakthrough research disappear into regulatory limbo, I realize that my knowledge of the past isn't the advantage I thought it was. Maya has adapted, evolved, and found allies I never knew existed. She's no longer the jealous sister trying to match my achievements. She's become something far more dangerous, a strategist with nothing left to lose and a billionaire's resources at her disposal. The war between us has entered a new phase, and I'm no longer certain I'm winning. The FDA inspection shuts down Hawthorne's lab for 3 months. During that time, Maya's transformation accelerates at an impossible pace. She's not just excelling at Johns Hopkins, she's rewriting the rules of academic achievement. At 19, she publishes her first paper on pharmaceutical applications of memory therapy, with Morrison's company listed as primary funding source. The research is sophisticated, cutting edge, and suspiciously similar to the preliminary work I'd been doing with Hawthorne. But Maya's most devastating move comes through our parents. She convinces them that my premature entry into advanced research has damaged my psychological development, that I'm exhibiting signs of stress and isolation that require family intervention. The irony is bitter. In my first life, I spent decades trying to prove I belonged in our family, and now Maya is using their love for me as a weapon. "We're worried about you, sweetheart," my father says during an awkward dinner at their favorite restaurant. "Maya thinks you've been pushing yourself too hard, trying to grow up too fast." He exchanges glances with my mother. "Maybe it's time to reconsider MIT. They've held your spot. You could start this fall, have a normal college experience." Normal, the word tastes like ash. Maya sits across from me, the picture of concerned, sisterly love, but I catch the triumphant gleam in her eyes. She's maneuvered our parents into believing that my success is actually a cry for help, that my independence is really isolation. It's psychological warfare at its finest. I counterattack by going public. The International Neuroscience Symposium accepts my paper for presentation, and I use the platform not just to share my research, but to expose the systematic suppression of breakthrough treatments by pharmaceutical companies. I name Morrison's company specifically, detailing how they've used regulatory manipulation to delay promising research. The presentation goes viral. Within days, I'm fielding interview requests from major media outlets. Morrison's stock price drops 15%. Maya's carefully constructed alliance with the pharmaceutical giant suddenly becomes a liability instead of an asset, but Morrison isn't finished. He fights back through channels I never expected, targeting not my research, but my personal life. Suddenly, questions surface about my family's immigration history, my adoption records, my legal status as a minor conducting independent research. A carefully orchestrated whisper campaign suggests that my breakthroughs might be plagiarized. that my youth makes my claims inherently suspect. The attacks escalate when Morrison's lawyers discover a technicality in my work visa status, something that should have been resolved years ago but was overlooked in the chaos of my early emancipation from traditional academics. They threaten deportation proceedings, claiming I'm operating outside the legal parameters of student research. Maya, meanwhile, has positioned herself as the legitimate young scientist, the one following proper channels and working within established systems. She gives interviews expressing concern for her adopted sister's mental health, suggesting that my radical departure from normal teenage development might be symptomatic of deeper issues. It's a masterful campaign of character assassination, and for the first time in either life, I feel truly defeated. My research is stalled, my credibility is under attack, and even my family questions my judgment. I'm isolated, fighting battles on multiple fronts when the impossible happens. I receive a call from Dr. Eleanor Hawthorne, not Elizabeth, my research mentor, but her older sister Eleanor, a woman I've never met but whose voice carries an authority that stops me cold. "Miss Chen," she says, "I think it's time we met. There are things about your first life that you need to understand, things that my sister was never allowed to tell you." We meet at an upscale cafe in downtown Boston, and Eleanor Hawthorne looks nothing like her younger sister. Where Elizabeth is warm and maternal, Eleanor is sharp and calculating, dressed in the kind of understated luxury that whispers of serious wealth. "In your original timeline," Eleanor begins without preamble, "you believed you achieved your breakthrough independently. You thought your genius alone carried you to success, and that Maya's jealousy stemmed from her inability to match your natural abilities." She stirs her coffee methodically. "You were wrong about both assumptions." My world tilts. "What do you mean? Your adoptive parents weren't the ones who facilitated your advanced education, Sarah. I was. Through a network of trusts and shell companies, I funded your opportunities, smoothed your path, eliminated obstacles that would have derailed lesser talents." Eleanor's eyes are ice blue and unforgiving. "You were my investment, my project. My attempt to prove that nurture could triumph over nature if applied with sufficient resources and strategic thinking." The revelation hits like a physical blow. Maya knew? Maya knew that you had help she wasn't receiving. She knew that your natural advantages were carefully orchestrated advantages. What she didn't know was the identity of your patron. Eleanor leans forward. She spent years trying to discover who was backing you, and when she finally succeeded in your first life, it drove her to desperate measures. The lab accident that killed you? Maya intended it to destroy my research data, not to harm you directly. Your death was collateral damage. I can barely process the information. Everything I believed about my first life, my achievements, my rivalry with Maya, even my death, was built on a foundation of lies. "Why?" I whisper. "Because Maya is my biological daughter," Eleanor says simply. "Given up for adoption when I was 17 and too ambitious to let motherhood derail my plans. I spent decades building my fortune, and when I finally had the resources to influence her life, I discovered she'd already been placed with your family. I couldn't claim her without destroying the stability she'd found, so I chose a different path. I would prove that my blood daughter wasn't inherently superior by elevating her adopted sister to greater heights." The cruelty of it takes my breath away. Eleanor pitted us against each other our entire lives, not out of favoritism, but as part of some twisted psychological experiment. "Maya figured it out 6 months before your death," Eleanor continues. "She learned that I was her biological mother, that I'd been sabotaging her opportunities while enhancing yours, that our entire rivalry was orchestrated by the woman who gave birth to her." Eleanor's smile is sharp as broken glass. The knowledge broke something in her mind. The lab accident was her attempt to destroy not just your research, but everything I had built through you. I stare at this woman who manipulated 2 lifetimes, who turned sisters into enemies for the sake of her own intellectual curiosity. "And now, what's your plan this time?" "This time," Eleanor says, "I'm backing both horses. Maya's alliance with Morrison serves my purposes. She's learned to be ruthless, strategic, everything I hoped she would become. But you've proven that natural talent can exceed even my expectations when properly motivated. She slides a business card across the table. The question is, now that you know the truth, what will you do with it? As I leave the cafe, my phone buzzes with a text from Maya. We need to talk. I know you met with Eleanor. It's time to end this war, permanently. Maya chooses the location for our confrontation with typical dramatic flair. The abandoned observatory where we used to stargaze as children, back when we still believed we were simply sisters who happened to excel at different things. She's waiting for me on the observation deck, silhouetted against the city lights below, looking like a figure from a tragic opera. So now you know, she says without turning around. Eleanor Hawthorne, the puppet master, pulling both our strings for the past 2 decades. Her laugh is bitter. Did she tell you about the psychological evaluations? The detailed reports she commissioned about our emotional development, our competitive drives, our breaking points? I approach cautiously, uncertain whether Maya sees me as ally or enemy in this moment. She said you found out 6 months before I died. Found out? Maya whirls to face me, and I see tears streaming down her cheeks. Sarah, I didn't just find out. I broke into her files. I spent months gathering evidence, trying to understand why every door that opened for you slammed shut for me. And when I finally accessed her computer system, I discovered 20 years of documentation about her nature versus nurture experiment. She pulls out a tablet, swiping through what appears to be scientific documentation. She recorded everything. Every scholarship she blocked for me, every recommendation letter she sabotaged, every opportunity she redirected to you instead. But do you know what the worst part was? I shake my head, though I suspect I already know. The worst part was reading her hypothesis. She genuinely believed that you, the adopted daughter, would outperform me, her biological child, if given sufficient advantages. Her entire experiment was predicated on the assumption that I was inherently inferior. Maya's voice breaks. She gave birth to me, gave me away, then spent decades trying to prove I wasn't worth keeping. The weight of Eleanor's manipulation crashes over me like a wave. Maya wasn't just my rival. She was Eleanor's victim, just like me. The lab accident. I was trying to destroy her research data, Maya confirms. All those files documenting how she'd manipulated our lives, turned us into lab rats for her twisted social experiment. I thought if I could eliminate the evidence, we could finally be free to succeed or fail on our own merits. She wipes her eyes with the back of her hand. I never meant for you to be there that night. When the explosion happened and you died, I realized I'd let her turn me into a monster. Standing in the place where we once shared childhood dreams, I finally understand the true scope of Eleanor's cruelty. She didn't just manipulate our opportunities. She weaponized our love for each other, turning genuine sisterly competition into something destructive and toxic. But Maya, I say carefully, in this timeline you allied with Morrison. You've been attacking my research, sabotaging my credibility. Because I thought you were still working with her, Maya explodes. When you deferred MIT and started making breakthrough discoveries at 18, I assumed Eleanor was behind it. I thought you were still her golden child, still benefiting from advantages I wasn't receiving. I couldn't let it happen again. The irony is staggering. We've been fighting each other when we should have been fighting Eleanor. She's playing the same game, I realize aloud. This time she's backing both of us, seeing which approach yields better results. Your alliance with Morrison, my independent research, we're still her test subjects. Maya nods grimly. Which means neither of us can win as long as she's controlling the board. She looks at me with something I haven't seen in either lifetime. Hope. Unless we change the rules entirely. What are you proposing? Full exposure, Maya says. Everything. Eleanor's manipulation of our first lives. Her continued interference in this timeline. The psychological experiments. The documentation of her nature versus nurture hypothesis. We go public with all of it. That would destroy both our careers, I point out. If people learn our achievements were orchestrated. Some of them were, Maya agrees. But not all. Your breakthrough in memory therapy? That was your genuine insight, even if Eleanor arranged for you to be in position to make it. My work with pharmaceutical applications? That came from real understanding, even if Morrison's funding was tainted. She extends her hand to me. We can succeed legitimately, Sarah, but only if we first destroy the woman who's been pulling our strings. I take her hand, and for the first time in 2 lifetimes, Maya and I are truly on the same side. The plan we devise is elegant in its simplicity. Using Maya's access to Morrison's resources and my connections in the research community, we coordinate a simultaneous release of information across multiple platforms. Eleanor's files, which Maya had copied years ago in our first timeline and is now accessed again through careful hacking, provide devastating evidence of her psychological manipulation. The story breaks during the International Pharmaceutical Ethics Summit, where Eleanor is scheduled to give a keynote address on ethical investment in scientific research. Instead of her prepared remarks, she finds herself confronting journalists armed with detailed documentation of her decades-long experiment on her own daughter and adopted daughter. The revelation destroys Eleanor's reputation overnight. Her companies lose billions in value as investors flee from association with someone who conducted unlicensed psychological experiments on minors. Maya and I, meanwhile, present ourselves as survivors who overcame systematic manipulation to achieve genuine scientific breakthrough. Morrison, faced with his own ethical scandal for knowingly collaborating with Eleanor, cuts ties with Maya and withdraws from the memory therapy market entirely. This leaves the field open for legitimate research, including the collaborative work that Maya and I begin developing together. As Eleanor's empire crumbles, in lawsuits and regulatory investigations, she makes one final desperate move. She contacts me directly, offering to transfer her entire fortune to my research foundation if I'll publicly support her version of events. "I gave you everything," she says during our last phone conversation. "Without my intervention, you would have remained ordinary. Your achievements, your recognition, your very identity as a genius, all of it came from me." "You're right," I tell her. "But that's not the same as saying I needed you. Maya and I have proven we can succeed without your manipulation. The question is, can you accept irrelevance without trying to destroy us both?" Her silence tells me everything I need to know. Eleanor Hawthorne, the woman who controlled 2 lifetimes, cannot bear to lose control of the narrative. She will not go quietly into obscurity, which means Maya and I have won this battle but not the war. The aftermath of Eleanor's exposure transforms both Maya and me into something we never expected: celebrities. Not just in the scientific community, but in the broader cultural conversation about achievement, family, and the ethics of ambition. Our story becomes a cautionary tale about the dangers of treating children as experiments, but also an inspiration about siblings overcoming manufactured rivalry to find genuine partnership. Maya and I established the Chen Hawthorne Institute for Ethical Neuroscience, deliberately including Eleanor's name as both acknowledgement and warning. Our joint research into memory therapy progresses at unprecedented speed, unhindered by corporate interference or artificial obstacles. For the first time in either of our lives, we're collaborating instead of competing, and the results are extraordinary. But success comes with a price neither of us anticipated. 6 months after Eleanor's downfall, I receive a visitor at the Institute. Dr. James Carrington, former director of psychological research at the prestigious Whitmore Foundation. He's a thin, elegant man in his 70s, with the kind of intellectual arrogance that reminds me uncomfortably of Eleanor. "Miss Chen," he says, settling into my office as if he belongs there, "your recent achievements have attracted considerable attention in certain circles. Circles that have been watching Dr. Hawthorne's work for many years. I keep my expression neutral, but internally I'm calculating escape routes." "I'm not sure what you mean." "Oh, I think you do," Carrington smiles. Eleanor's methodology was crude, her documentation sloppy, her emotional attachment to her subjects compromising. But her core hypothesis, that exceptional human potential can be systematically cultivated through strategic manipulation of environment and opportunity, that hypothesis was sound. The temperature in the room seems to drop. "Are you suggesting—" "I'm suggesting that Eleanor was merely one researcher in a much larger study," Carrington continues. "The Whitmore Foundation has been conducting longitudinal research on human potential for over 50 years. We've identified, tracked, and subtly influenced the development of hundreds of exceptional individuals across multiple generations. My mouth goes dry. Hundreds? Oh, yes. Artists, scientists, entrepreneurs, political leaders, all of them beneficiaries of carefully calibrated interventions designed to maximize their potential while maintaining the illusion of natural development. Carrington opens his briefcase and removes a thick file. Your case was particularly interesting because of the sibling dynamic. Eleanor's experiment with you and Maya provided valuable data about competitive versus collaborative developmental models. I stare at the file, which has my name printed on the tab. How long? Since you were 7 years old, Carrington says matter-of-factly. Your adoptive parents' selection of that particular school district, the availability of advanced academic programs, the scholarship opportunities, the research positions, all of it orchestrated by our network of associates and shell organizations. The room spins. Eleanor wasn't the puppet master, she was another puppet, operating within a system so vast and sophisticated that her individual manipulations were just minor variations on a predetermined theme. Eleanor discovered our involvement 3 years before your death, Carrington continues. She threatened to expose the entire program unless we allowed her complete control over your development. We declined her ultimatum. You killed her experiment, I realize. You arranged for Maya to discover the truth, knowing it would destabilize the entire situation. We prefer to think of it as allowing natural consequences to unfold, Carrington says smoothly. Eleanor's emotional attachment compromised the scientific validity of her work. Her death allowed us to collect valuable data about trauma response and resilience patterns. I feel sick. And now, what do you want? Your cooperation, Carrington says simply. The Whitmore Foundation is prepared to offer unlimited resources for your research, along with access to a global network of exceptional individuals who could serve as collaborators or subjects. In exchange, we ask only that you allow us to continue documenting your development and occasionally provide guidance on matters of strategic importance. It's the same offer Eleanor made, dressed in more sophisticated language. Another golden cage, another benevolent dictator offering to control my life in exchange for success. And if I refuse? Carrington's smile doesn't waver. The Chen Hawthorne Institute has received significant federal funding for its research. That funding depends on maintaining proper oversight and ethical standards. If questions were raised about the Institute's founding circumstances, about potential fraud in your early career, about irregularities in your academic credentials, he shrugs. Bureaucratic investigations can be so time-consuming and expensive. The threat is clear. Refuse to cooperate and they'll destroy everything Maya and I have built together. That evening, I call Maya to warn her about Carrington's visit, but she's already heard from him. Her voice is hollow as she recounts a similar conversation, a similar offer, a similar threat. Sarah, she says, I don't think we ever escaped. I think we just moved from one cage to another, slightly larger cage. As I sit alone in my apartment that night, staring out at the city lights, I realize that our victory over Eleanor was Pyrrhic. We destroyed one puppeteer, only to discover we were part of a much larger puppet show with strings we couldn't even see, let alone cut. The next morning brings news that confirms my worst fears. Dr. Marcus Webb, the same Marcus Webb who died in the car accident after my intervention in this timeline, has been identified as one of the Whitmore Foundation's subjects. His death wasn't random. It was data collection. They allowed a promising young person to die just to observe how his loss would affect Maya's psychological development. Maya and I meet at the observatory again, but this time neither of us has solutions. We've learned that free will might be an illusion, that our achievements might be predetermined, that even our rebellion was anticipated and accommodated by systems beyond our comprehension. We could run, Maya suggests without conviction. Disappear, start over somewhere they can't find us. And give up our research, let them win by default? I shake my head. There has to be another way. But even as I say it, I'm not sure I believe it. The Whitmore Foundation has resources that dwarf Eleanor's capabilities, connections that span generations, influence that reaches into every corner of academic and political life. Fighting them would mean fighting the very systems that have shaped modern intellectual development. My phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. Dr. Chen, we need to meet. I have information about Whitmore that you need to hear. They've made a mistake. And that mistake might be their downfall. Come alone to the address below. Atsuo's a friend. As I show the message to Maya, we both realize that our war isn't over. It's just beginning, and the stakes are higher than we ever imagined. The address leads to an abandoned warehouse in the industrial district, the kind of place where conspiracy theorists meet in bad movies. But the person waiting for me isn't what I expect. She's a young woman, maybe 25, with prematurely gray hair and the haunted expression of someone who's seen too much truth. My name is Dr. Rebecca Santos, she says, extending a hand that trembles slightly. I used to work for Whitmore, keyword, used to. She leads me to a makeshift office hidden behind stacked shipping containers, where multiple monitors display what appears to be surveillance footage and data streams. I was part of their psychological analysis team for 8 years, Rebecca explains. My job was to evaluate subject responses and recommend intervention strategies. Your case file crossed my desk 6 months ago. She pulls up a document that makes my blood run cold. Project Lazarus, Second Life Implementation Protocol. The file contains detailed psychological profiles of dozens of individuals, all marked with the same notation. Rebirth candidates, memory retention confirmed. They know, I whisper. They know we remember our first lives. More than that, Rebecca says grimly, they caused it. The accidents that killed you, Maya, and 47 other subjects weren't accidents at all. They were controlled terminations, followed by experimental revival procedures using cutting-edge neurotechnology. The revelation hits like a physical blow. I died not because of Maya's sabotage, but because Whitmore decided I'd generated sufficient data in my first life and wanted to observe how retained memories would affect my second attempt at achievement. You're all part of the same experiment, Rebecca continues. They wanted to see if artificially enhanced individuals could maintain their advantages even after experiencing death and rebirth. The psychological trauma, the changed circumstances, the new obstacles, all of it designed to test the durability of cultivated genius. I think of Maya, of our manufactured rivalry, of Eleanor's manipulations that were themselves manipulated by an even larger system. How many of us are there? 48 subjects across multiple generations. Scientists, artists, politicians, entrepreneurs, all of them killed at strategic points in their development, then revived with their memories intact to see how they'd adapt to changed circumstances. Rebecca's voice is barely above a whisper. You and Maya were the first sibling pair. They wanted to observe how retained trauma would affect family dynamics. And you, I ask, why are you helping me? Rebecca pulls back her sleeve, revealing surgical scars along her forearm. Because I'm subject number 37. And unlike the rest of you, I remember not just my first death, but my second and third as well. The warehouse around us suddenly feels less like a hideout and more like a war room. Rebecca isn't just offering information, she's offering alliance with someone who survived this nightmare multiple times. The question is, Rebecca says, her eyes reflecting the monitor light like steel, are you ready to stop being their subject and start being their destroyer? Because I know where their real facilities are hidden, I know which government officials are compromised, and I know exactly how to bring down a system that thinks it can treat human consciousness like a renewable resource. I look at this woman who's died 3 times for the advancement of someone else's research, who's offering me the chance to fight back against forces that reduce human beings to data points, and I realize something that changes everything.